Okay, tonight we're actually going to have a pretty decent discussion on running websites under NT accounts. And I actually get this question quite a bit, especially from developers and I suppose other admins as well. So I guess that would be pretty much everybody. Um, about, I've got Windows security set up in my database, and how do I run my website under that user so that I don't have to hard code a SQL connection in my web config file or in my ASP file or in my PHP file or whatever, right? So tonight we're going to talk about how to make that happen. Now the first step, of course, is you have to have your user account set up in the database, right? So I'm going to show you what I got here real quick. I've got this guy right here. Nope, sorry, not that guy. This guy right here. We're gonna work with the IT Bookworm site. So I've got the IT Bookworm user here, and I've got the website, and I have given him the rights he needs. He's got read and write rights in there, and he's got execute on a couple SPs. So the user himself has the rights that he needs to set up in the database in order to do his job. And it's important that you get this worked out first. You'll cut through a lot of red tape if you have problems getting this up and going, if you just make sure that the user has the rights to do everything in the database that he needs. So what I would do is I would set up the users here that I need, and then I would make a connection to the database as that user and do the things by hand, or at least a majority of the things, right, by hand that he needs to do to make sure that to make sure that he can do what he needs to do. So after that, you need to configure IIS to be able to run the website under that account. So here I'm on a web server, and I've got my master MSC here that has all of my plugins. I like to do that rather than bounce back and forth. So what I'm going to do is I'll go to IIS here. Now, there's a couple things you need to do. First of all, you need to tell the website that it's going to be running under that username. Now, what I also like to do is I like to set up an application pool as well. And what that's going to do is that's just going to allow me to segregate this user's resources, so this website's resources. So I come in here, you can do all this stuff. All we're really concerned with here is the user account that it's going to be running under. So I want the user account to be running under here. Okay, so you just give the NT username and the password. Now, of course, if you ever change the username and password, you've got to come change it here, right? So you'll do that, and then you'll restart it. I'll stop it here, and then I'll start it. Now, even if you you configure this incorrectly, unless the password is wrong, it'll still start. And I'll show you some stuff on that here in a few minutes. And then you come in here to the website properties, and you'll go to directory security, you'll go to edit, and normally it says here enable anonymous login or anonymous access, and this is where it would ordinarily be your iUser account, and you want to change that here to the account that you're wanting to hit the database with. And this is the user account that's actually going to hit the database. This is where it gets those credentials. So you set it up for integrated Windows authentication, and notice again your password is here. So if you have to change your password, you have two places to change it, right? You have to change it here, and you have to change it in the application pool. So once you get the enable anonymous access set to the username and password that you want it to run under, and this is again your AD password, right? Then you're good to go, really. There are a couple other permissions you need. Now you can do this by hand. Actually, here I'll just show you. There's one thing that you need to make sure that you do. I'll come over here into AD, into users. You need to make sure that this guy is a member of the IISWPG group. Okay? If he is not, then you will get a service unavailable when you go to start up your website. When you go to your website, you will get a service unavailable message, and that's because that it doesn't have the permissions, the appropriate permissions, unless it's part of this group, to run an IIS worker process. And I think that's what that stands for. It's the worker process group. So it's the IIS worker process group. And you don't have the permissions to set up a worker process unless you belong to that group. Now, you can set up those, like almost anything, you can set up those permissions implicitly. There may, unless I forget one, there's you have to set it up to access the computer from the network. You have to be able to log in as a batch job. You have to be able to impersonate the client after authentication, and bypass traverse checking, I think. And the way you would do all those is you would come in here to secpol.msc, and then under user rights assignment you would start picking those guys. So here's login as a batch job, impersonate client after authentication, bypass traverse checking is right there, and then access the computer from the network. So those are the four that I can think of off the top of my head. And like I said, if I may be missing one, so if I am, then number one, sue me. But for the most part, that's what that group is for. You don't have to remember all that stuff. Just put it in this group, and you should be fine. I can't remember if you need to separately give it rights to log in as a service. But if that's the case, then go back into SecPol and give it login as a service, and you'll be fine. Now that's for the local computer, for the local web server, right? So it needs to belong to the local IIS-WPG group. This is a domain controller, so that's why I have AD on here. But ordinarily it would be the local IIS-WPG group if it's not a domain controller, right? Okay, so you got that. You got those permissions set, you've got IIS permissions set, and you've got your application pool. You should be good to go, right? Oh, wait a minute, there was one more thing here. Along with the application pool, I believe this is fairly important, especially if you're going to run it as a specific application pool. Come back in here into properties and website. I'm losing myself. There it is. So here on application pool, you have to choose the appropriate application pool. See, I've got all these guys right here. You need to choose the appropriate application pool under home directory in order to make it use that application pool. Now you're good to go. Okay, so I got that. Now inside of my website itself, if I come into IT Bookworm, and I've got my connections here, and you'll see my DB string include file. I come in here, you notice how I've got this connection string set to use integrated security, right? So integrated security equals SSPI. What that does is that tells IIS or that tells ADO to use the Windows account that the process is currently running under, which is the anonymous access ID that we just set up in IIS. So this will be hitting the database as the IT Bookworm user AD account. Ordinarily, you would have to put a SQL account in here by specifying user ID and password, but you can see here that you can't fake this. Nobody could jump on your web server and steal your username and password and access your database elsewise, because there's nothing written here. So now that we do that, we're done. If I come in here and refresh this, and this is running off the new site. See, it's running off the new site, and everything is beautiful, right? It works just fine. And this is running under the account I just specified. Now, I told you a second ago I would show you what happened if you had problems. Security will give you your best thing here. I went through this earlier today, and I forgot to put it in the IIS-WPG group, so I had problems, actually. Let me see if I got... Fine, be that way. It's not going to... filter. Let's filter this guy. Let's do that. Just so I can find this. Okay, here we go. Now we've got this failure audit here, and this is exactly what you're going to see right here. This is perfect. The user has not been granted the requested logon type for this machine or at this machine, and it gives me the username, the domain, the machine name, and so on. And this is the key. This is the key right here. The user has not been granted the requested logon type at this machine. What that means is just what it says. You don't have the appropriate permissions to run as an application pool. This is what happens when you're running the application pool. When you don't have the appropriate rights to run the application pool under that user account. So when you go to do this, if you get those errors, now there are a number of other errors that you'll run across as well, right? This is just the telltale sign. If you get this error, because the application pool, when you do this, and I wish I could start it for you, but I don't want to mess up the site, right? When you start up the application pool initially, NIIS application pools, when I start this initially, it'll start just fine. Then when I go to the website, I'll get a service unavailable. I'll come back here and refresh it, and it'll be turned off. And that's when you come in here to security and you go, oh, I see. Oh, okay, I forgot to put it in the WPG group. And then you go put it in that group, and you should get it right away. Now, if you still can't get in from the website from there at that point, then you probably just need to restart the browser, because a lot of times it'll cache that call. So restart the browser, bring it up again. You should be able to get in. But anyway, that's how you that's how you run a website under a user account and hit a database. And you should be good to go after that. And this is the same for SQL, for Oracle, IBM DB2, anybody that can run under an NT user account. All they need is the database permissions, and this is just how you pass those permissions to the database. So that's a big question I get a lot, and I hope I answered it. And anybody out there that has never done this before, I hope this sets you on your way. Anyway, good luck with that.